Welcome everyone to Gary Grove's Artist Talk, a retrospective about making things. Before we begin this conversation, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is within the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people of clear salt water, Suquamish people. Expert fishers, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. We pay respects to their elders past and present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming on a beautiful spring day. It's my great honor to introduce Gary Groves. I think most of the people in the audience know Gary. I met him, Gary was one of the first artists that I met actually when I took the job at BIMA. We didn't open until 2013, but we were planning and building from 2010 on. And I remember when Art Grice had the Art in the Woods Gallery, and I was able to attend and met several people, including some of you in the audience, through that experience. And I was a hobbyist printmaker. It was more of a stress relief than a career path for me. I used to take classes at different art schools in New York and realized at one point that the world did not need one more mediocre printmaker, but they needed arts organizations that survive. So I took a different path. But I've always been very much enamored and in awe of Gary Groves. I think he's truly a master artist. We have many of them in our region. And it's really been a thrill to work with him and learn much more about his early influences. And I just want to thank Gary so much for having your retrospective with us and being here almost every day, entertaining and interpreting your work. I really appreciate that too. So.
Well, I just want to express my thanks for giving me this opportunity. It happens to coincide with my 86th birthday. So, what a wonderful birthday present this is for me to have my work in the gallery. And it's just a great pleasure to be able to do this. And I thank you very much for allowing me to do this. So thank you.
People often ask as chief curator how we can keep doing great shows at BIMA, and I say having amazing artists doing really wonderful, diverse work really helps. You know, it's I just get to facilitate it and help arrange it and tell the story. So, and if you haven't met Jenna before, Jenna is new in the education department, managing education and community programs, taking over for Kristen Tollefson. So we'll get started. Gary has, we've spent quite a bit of time at his house looking at old photographs, scrapbook things, and he talks about building, basically making things all his life. Why don't you tell us what this is?
Well, and this is when I was in high school. A lot of my classmates and friends said they were going to start making a hot rod. So I kind of witnessed the mediocre things they did, and I said, you know, I want to do something that's done and do it right. So I bought the body and the frame separately, put this thing together, and it was probably my first major project that I tried to do something with, and it's funny because I finished it and I drove it for about 2 months. Then I went in the Navy, stored it in a warehouse, and came out of the Navy with other things I wanted to do with my life. So I sold it, traded it in on a Hillman Minx. So anyway, that was one of my things. I've been making things all my life. When I was 10 years old, I was making toys for the neighbor kids. I learned how to use a table saw and put things together for, I think I sold them for $10 or something. But the thing is, it gave me confidence that I could do things, and I felt my brains were in my hands. I could make things and make them well, and I didn't do great in school. I got by, but I was working on things that I made. That gave me the most pleasure. So that was kind of the starting of all that. And
Could you speak to some other early influences and ideas as you kind of transitioned from hot rods to photography and drawing?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Want to speak about your early influences and ideas as you started with photography and drawing? Yeah.
I spent time when I was in the Navy in Japan. And in Kamakura, Japan, where I was living, I found several woodblock print artists. At the time, I had never tried it. But the craftsmanship was superb, and it enticed me into thinking about, at least, doing it. So I came back to this country. Well, I brought back a wonderful wife, too. So that was a good trip.
That's good. We have a couple of slides of woodcut artists that you'll be seeing also to talk more about the influences. You'll see a few photographs of the exhibition as we go through this presentation. And I just wanted to tell you how important it was for Gary that people did understand his influences. So in this first room that you enter, the orientation gallery, you'll see his photography, some drawings, etchings, early etchings, and then some samples, because we have a lot of field trips and we love to show kids process. You'll see some of the actual wood plates. And so how, Gary, your early days as a photographer, in my mind, there's such a thread through about the composition, the contrast, this black and white and gray world that you love so much aesthetically. How did you start in photography, and what were you thinking as you were taking photographs?
Well, when I was in Japan, I bought a little Miranda camera because I didn't have a camera, and I bought a camera to record things that I saw, and everything was different because in Japan, people did things that were different, and they made things that were different, and it just enticed me into starting to photograph things that were interesting to me. This is not in Japan, but when I came back, I really started doing a lot of photography. And this is, I don't even remember where this is, but
Can you just hold the mic a little closer to you?
yeah, I'm sorry.
It's perfect, thank you.
Hold my finger on the button.
Yeah.
But anyway, photography was the one medium I worked in for quite a while.
We can't hear. I think you turned it off, Gary. Can you push the button one more time?
And leave my finger off the button.
Yeah.
Push it off.
Why don't we go to the next slide too? We'll show some other influences.
I'm trying.
Try it again.
The red light went off. Does that mean that's off? Or?
Should be green.
No, I don't have a
Here we
green
go.
light. I have a red light.
That's on, I think.
It's off though. Okay.
Hold it up to your this.
So here we have images.
Finger on the button. Okay, tell me when you can't hear me.
Yeah. Hit the button one more time. And here.
Let's see. I'm going to see if this one
I'm
works
gonna-
better for you.
Here,
Okay.
why don't you try that one instead? All right. So yeah, just hold it. And don't touch the button. Don't press the button at all.
Keep my hands off the button. Okay.
It's not a walkie-talkie.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So here we have some of your rock formations, as well as some of the samples from the woodcut.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
these are the woodcuts here, and I can't quite see everything over there, but there are some.
You have drawings
Yeah, there are
further
a couple
that
drawings.
don't
There were a
show.
couple drawings, and then some etchings, and I think those are etchings. I went to. I took a class at Cornish in printmaking because I didn't know much about it, and so that's where I kind of got an interest in doing etchings. And then later, I guess my memory of the woodcuts in Japan enticed me to get into the woodcut. And I'd been working with wood all my life, so it was a familiar material to work with, and I felt if I could learn how to do more with it, it would be a great challenge, and that's what.
One of the things I notice very early in your work, even with just photography, is that there's this push-pull between representationalism, not really realism. Nothing you've done is, like borders photorealism or anything like that. But there's a lot that is recognizable, and yet you're pushing into abstraction. And that really becomes clear with the early drawings that are not in the photo, but on the left. You'll see them when you tour through. And then these etchings also.
Yep.
And it really accentuates the black and white contrast. And I just think it's really interesting that you didn't pursue one and then give that up and go to the other, but you go back and forth between those worlds.
And these woodcut samples in the gallery are so helpful during field trips, but also just for visitors to kind of understand the process of printmaking, because I know it's very mysterious to a lot of people how prints actually happen.
Well, I think woodcut was the ideal medium for me because I had been working with wood all my life, and I was familiar with the material. It felt good to me, and versus etching, which is metal plates, and anyway, I gravitated towards the wood, and it's a comfortable material for me to work with, and I'm glad I did. So,
and tell us about your choice of the Dremel tools, because having spent time in Japan and studying there, obviously you're a master carver with the more traditional tools, the Japanese blades. And just wondering, if you look at, we go back and forth, Valerie, or with the actual woodcut pieces from Japan, there are a couple. One is from the early 19th century and one is more contemporary. But you credit this experience in Japan, heavily with choosing this medium.
well, I got an opportunity throughout Kamakura, where I was living. There was a lot of craftsmen in Kamakura, woodblock print artists, and people making wooden objects. And the level of expertise was at a much higher level than I'd ever seen before. So it kind of enticed me to give it a whirl.
Yeah.
And when I was in Japan, I didn't have tools to work with or anything, but I brought that back with me when I came back. And I just feel that craftsmanship was something that impressed me, and I didn't think about it much more than that, but I just started when I got home. There's a Dremel, and I used the Dremel a lot because I'd worked with wood pretty much all my life, and I was familiar with the tools, I was familiar with the material itself, and that enticed me to see what I could do with it. And so it's been a good, faithful way to do my woodcuts, and now I am beginning to realize that being 86, some of those woodcuts in the gallery took me 2 or 3 weeks to carve, and I want to use my time better, so I'm going back to drawing.
Oh, cool. That's great.
So it just makes sense out of the use of time, and I like it.
Yeah.
I go to Eastern Washington a lot and go over there and sit down and do 2 or 3 drawings a day instead of spending 2 or 3 weeks on one of these blocks, given the time I have left.
With the Dremel tools, I understand wood cut with the traditional Japanese tools. I've
Right,
done that.
right.
This, you call them wood cuts, but it's almost like you're chewing the wood up or something.
Well, they're very sharp, these little tools, and they do cut it, but you are kind of chewing it up because you can have multiple different size heads on the device, so you can carve larger areas or smaller areas. I do the real fine. I go to my dentist and I get these little tools they carve on your teeth with, and those are the ones I do the detail work. And then as I get away from the edges, I use a bigger tool and carve away, and then sometimes just use hand tools to get that extra wood out of the road. So.
Thanks. I think we can go back. And when I first looked through stacks of old photographs and things, these really, really caught my eye. And a few of us were at Gary's house and laid a whole bunch of things out. And Gary talked about, I think it was the first trip to Japan. But what hit me after seeing so many of the carvings is, again, this contrast of black and white. The shadows that emerge later become really the main characters. He starts off carving these huge hillsides and rock formations, and then just like there's this push and pull between representationalism and abstraction, the shadows become more and more important. And I don't know if these were random photographs or there's something about the composition that caught your eye, but I see a real affinity with these and then your later prints. And even looks like, I don't know if that's rain or snow, but on
That's
the
snow.
on
There's
the
snow.
umbrella, when you do the really, really fine carving, and it becomes more ethereal, which is a wonderful thing that you do. That particular one reminds me of those pieces. So I was really intrigued by these. We didn't want to spend too much wall space on early influences, so I didn't mount these, but I really wanted to share them with the presentation today.
Well, Japan I was just, everything I saw was interesting. I gotta push the button again. I'm gonna push a button on my head, maybe. I think that I was just totally amazed at everything I saw in Japan. I mean, I apprenticed for a while. I was into ceramics too. Another thing I did, I apprenticed as a potter with a Japanese family that both the father and the son were ceramic artists. So I would ride my bicycle out to the site every day and come back, and my kids their mother would be taking care of them, and one of them wasn't even born then yet. But anyway, I just loved being there, and it got to the point, however, that it was important for me to get on with my life. We came back and carried on with our life, and I don't know. Somehow everything I choose to do works out, and it's a blessing. I don't know what I did right to do that, but I did something, because I have 3 wonderful kids and grandkids, and it just happened to be the right positive kind of thing happening throughout my life. So I have a lot of thanks a lot for somebody for letting this all happen. So I feel gifted.
So,
Is your green light on, Gary?
I'm sorry?
Is the light?
why don't I switch mics
Yeah.
and don't touch the buttons.
You and I can share.
I
Okay.
think I can.
So here we move on to more recent work with rock formations.
Yeah, and this is just another installation shot of the gallery to give you kind of a sense of, on the right are these prints that really seem very similar to the early etchings and the drawings. If you look in the orientation gallery and then you go out, But again, I love the mix of abstraction and more realism, really. So, Gary, you also alternate. There's shadows that are dominant, but you also have backgrounds that you
Yeah.
make black. And tell us a little bit about those choices.
Well-
Can everybody hear me?
I think that mic is out of batteries, so maybe let's just decommission the blue one. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
All right, well, it's still green, so I guess I'm on. Well, the shadows are, I mean, it's like in photography or any other visual medium, the shadows become a dominant characteristic in the images, and I guess I'm conscious of these, subconscious or whatever, but I being in photography for a long time, I learned to look for those details, those things that made it something special. And in the prints, I guess I'm looking for the same kind of thing. So it seems to work well with the prints as well. And well, I'm really happy, with, this is the first time I've ever seen this much of my work together. So it was a treat for me to see things I'd done and forgotten about. In the studio, they're all stacked in racks, and I forgot about them. So Greg giving me this opportunity to put them all out, or a lot of them, it gave me a chance to re-educate myself with my own work. And I think it's a gift to do that. So,
Could you speak a little more about your interest in rock formations and cliff faces and the Eastern
Yeah.
Washington landscape?
well, I've been to Eastern Washington an awful lot, and right now it's just about time for me to head back over there again. But those rocks, to me, at least, every time I go over there, I go to places there are no other people around. And the rock formations are sculpturally interesting, but also I often go up and put my hand on the rocks, and I feel like they're kind of talking to me. There's something about their history that's been maybe not unrealized, but not people that live over there, probably they're just in their way all the time. But there is a quality about them that entices me to go up and touch them, and I get nice vibrations anyway in my head, but that's the way I respond to it. And I think that was something that makes me want to go back over more often. And actually now it's just about weather good to head back over again. And
I'm also thinking Gail Bard's here in the audience, and you've told very similar stories about the road trips and the importance of all of that in your paintings and discoveries. This is one that, in particular, I feel like, one thing we shouldn't skip is the process of transferring your photographs. Can you
Right.
explain to people, because from a distance, a lot of these pieces, especially this one, look very much like a photograph.
yeah, well, I was incorporating my interest or experience with photography to take what you want with it to the next medium you want to work with. And the camera is a wonderful way to record things that I see. I do, and I'm going to start doing more of it, going over and do drawings. But the photographs, almost all of them that are in the show began as photographs. And so that is a way to get the image on a piece of paper. And
So you use a solution, and it's a photo transfer right onto the flat wood.
yeah, well, I do. I make photographs and blow them up, and then make photocopies, and then I can transfer that to the wood with a solvent.
And that's the reverse of the original photograph.
Right, and that's what it has to be in order to carve it, because everything's carved in reverse.
So when you
Flip.
run it through the press, you end up within the same orientation as the original photo.
Right, but I'm carving all these details, and I go to, like I think I said, I go to my dentist and get these little tiny tools that I use on your teeth. They work well on wood too. So,
Gary, there's only a few pieces in the show that have any hint of humanity. There's a couple with well, there's maybe more than a few, because you also have the farmscapes with, all those wonderful lines and things. But there's only a couple that have a sliver of a roadway. There's kind of an abstract hint of maybe a train trestle. And I see this love of abstraction even in the patterns of the farm fields. But when you continue drawing, are you going to kind of exclude exclude people and?
Well, I'll exclude the camera for one thing. I want to draw directly from the subject versus starting out with photographs. I think I was using photographs, incorporating what I'd done with photography, but now I want to go over and just do drawings alone. You have to keep your interest and excitement about what you're doing at a fairly high level to really do it well. And so what I'm trying to do is give myself some challenges that if I achieve what I want, I think are going to be getting better work, and I hope. But photography's great for what I've done with it. It's worked well, but now I want to just do drawings. And I think we'll see what happens. But I can do 2 or 3 drawings in a day, and to carve those blocks took me 2 or 3 weeks, one of them.
What excited and interested you about these fieldscapes?
Well, I guess they explain something that I was impressed with when I confronted these things. I mean, they just the lines of the plowed fields, and when they cut the wheat, how it created lines. And I guess at the root of most of my work, I'm trying to point out things that I want other people to experience and pay attention to. And I think that's kind of the reason that I do a lot of my prints. I think there's a lot of beauty in the landscape that needs to be advertised a little bit. So I think this is one of the reasons that I do what I do. But it's also just a personal thing of having a record of something I saw that was significant to me, and I want to share it with other people. So,
You've also introduced motion in your work, this sense of movement, and also capturing more of a moment. The rock formations, all the cliff sides, they feel timeless. Like they could have looked like that for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And now you're introducing kind of a sense of temporary.
Well, I think when, the sun moves and the shadows move, so there's one rock situation with a shadow on it in one way is different. There's one of those that I think we showed earlier. The first one, I think, was that rock. I've gone by it many times, in that one, and that shadow is the shadow from this rock on the other rock. And I think that I just caught it at a time that I'd passed it many times, and it was different, and it didn't attract me, but this one did, so away I went with it. So these are my, not the latest thing I've done, but these are things I've done recently. I was parked, I was visiting a friend who had a studio in North Oregon, on the Oregon side of the Columbia, and I was waiting for him to show up, and there was a grapevine in front of my car, and I started noticing these little guys, the little curlicue. Well, it also kind of reminded me of some Japanese and Chinese calligraphy. I mean, the configurations of it. So I brought some of them home, and I set up a light situation where I could get the shadow. And they were just fun. I mean, you know, they're just whimsical little things. And so these are 2 blocks. The shadow block is printed first and the other block over that. And I've got several in the show that are different configurations. But this is a thing about being a printmaker, a photographer, whatever. You pay a lot of attention to the world around you and see things other people don't. And then I want to point those things out. And it's, I don't know, it gives me a reason to do things.
These feel figural. When I first saw, well, you've been working on this series only a few years, right?
Yeah.
It felt like these vines were people dancing or something like
Yeah,
that.
well,
And-
they're fun.
And just the subtle beauty of the shadow compared. Are we looking at, when you look at the vine, the darker piece, are we looking at the grain of the wood? Sometimes in what you print, I see that in some of what you do. Or are these actual cuts?
Well,
Like the little lines going up vertically?
well, that's things that showed up in maybe in the photograph. I don't remember, but yeah, I just like to bring them home and see what I can do with them. And the shadow, the way I got that was I carved a separate block and then pounded sandpaper in it to get that texture. So you find ways to do things, and it's something that I'll probably do more of. But when I first saw them, I was just thrilled at and there's several in the show that they're just fun.
How big are the pieces of grapevine that you were
Oh, they were
using?
tiny. You know, I just like picked the end of them, then projected it, had light source behind, and got the shadow on a piece of paper, and took a photograph to arrest that particular situation. So
They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
What I've enjoyed about working with you on this, and Dasha Moore, who's our curatorial associate, worked very closely with Gary and I. But what I really enjoy about this retrospective is there is such a thread through of ideas, and yet your work keeps changing over the years, and you don't abandon one series. You go back to it. I've worked on some retrospectives where it literally looks like a group show because someone's life changed, their interests changed, their media changed, and you walk through these different pockets and kind of explain the trajectory of that life and career. But I see one complete thought, you know, in what you're doing, and it's just kind of magical to weave through and see everything that is so different, and yet there's a similarity of your vision in it. So I've really enjoyed this. It hasn't made my head explode or anything like that.
well, I haven't. I'm not really aware of this. I just keep doing things, and I do notice, you know, when I've got them on the wall, this is a gift for me to see all this work on the walls because I've never seen that much of my work, so I can sit there and pick up on things that I didn't see before because I didn't have them in sequence. So.
Is there anything that surprised you in seeing everything together that you picked up on that you weren't aware of in your own work?
Does it surprise me? What?
Was there anything that surprised you when looking at
Oh,
all of your work together?
all the time. Yeah, I mean,
like what connections came
yeah.
to you?
Well, it makes it interesting for the artist to discover things. They had a feeling. You have a gut feeling for something, and maybe you never recognize what you're seeing. But I often find, especially these little guys. I remember the time when I brought them home. Actually, these were on the Oregon side of the Columbia, and I remember picking those things and bringing them home. And then when I started messing around with them, it was like a moving picture of all these shapes, and I was thrilled about it. I didn't have the shadow, however, in it, but then when I photographed it, but I did have, I had a shadow that I paid attention to later. So anyway, you learn from your own work. You discover things you didn't set out to discover, and that's the thrill of it all. You know, there's just a lot of things that just are by happenstance. You don't plan it, but then you have to be keen on watching for those things. And that's a lot of my work is that way. Something attracted me to a subject, but then it wasn't until I got started working with it that I discovered there was some little magic there going on. So anyway.
Are you at all intimidated by going to drawing? I'm wondering about with your prints, you can take your photographs, blow them up, transfer them. With the vine, you take something really small, you can cast light. So you're kind of creating a world, you know, beyond what the original thing is. With drawing, it's going to be that drawing, and I'm just wondering, like, what scale you might do, or you know, it seems in a way simpler, and yet I don't know.
Well, I think there's a discovery factor that starts to happen when you're drawing. You know, you're attracted to a subject, and you don't really analyze why, but then when you start drawing, you start seeing some little magic of something that you didn't anticipate. And I think that's a gift to have that happen. And so I'm looking forward to, well, the drawing in that I can, a good excuse to head for Eastern Washington again, and also to go back to some places that I photographed before and go back and do a drawing and just see what happens. I don't think you go with intentions. You just sort of follow your pencil and see what happens. So anyway, I'm looking forward to, and also, you know, at my age, those prints out there, some of them took me 2 weeks or 3 weeks to carve, and I can do an awful lot of drawing in 3 weeks.
Printmaking's a lot of cleanup also. That's what I learned.
Well, that's part of it, yeah. Yeah, this was one of the, I frequent the gun emplacements both on the island and like Whidbey Island. There are a lot of old from the Second World War, I guess. And the concrete, this was one that I like a lot. It just happened to be a shadow that worked well with the rest of it.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And that there's something we can kind of recognize. We have a sense of what it is without you explaining it.
Yeah.
And yet there's a lot of abstraction in this also.
Well, there's that little dog sitting in there. You see that shadow? Looks like a little dog. He didn't bark at me, but he was there.
Wondering what's going on.
Well, this is the thing, that every place I go, I'm looking for something. And I could go to the same place twice and find something I missed the first time. There's all these gifts, and I really like the gun emplacements because you get this rigid concrete structure, and then all of nature around it and what happens, the two working against or with one another. And there's just a lot of, I really enjoy traveling and just looking to see what I can find. It makes my life a lot more interesting. I'd like that, and then hopefully too that I can pass on some of that to other people, maybe not artists, but look a little bit more closely where you go, and you'll find things you didn't realize, and it's rewarding.
You must have had a chance to look back on the retrospective exhibition, the things that we pulled to show or didn't show. Are there things you'd like the audience to know about your work or career that is not reflected in what we've mounted?
Well, I guess, again, I hope that the work and the things I've done with my subjects, what I've captured in the subject, might make people look a little harder at the world around them. Because there's no end to interesting things. You can go same place twice and find a world of difference in what you see. And I think I'm making my own life interesting because I'm looking for these things. And it's very rewarding when you find something. It's like just capturing this particular shadow, and you're glad you did it, and that's my life. It's what I do.
Maybe we can move to Q&A. Valerie, shall we offer this microphone to the crowd? Or?
Anyone have any questions for Gary?
Thank you. I tend to project, so I probably don't. When you were in Japan, did you ever try sumi brush? And because some of your work is kind of evokes that for me.
I don't think so. I was doing a lot of photography of things because it was a way to capture things that I just saw wherever I was, and it's like that one on the lower left was right outside the Kamakura Eki, our train station, and the two girls were doing whatever you call that with the strings, and these are things I just happened to have a camera ready. But that's some of the first photographs I took in Japan. I bought this camera. It was a Miranda camera, 35 millimeter, and boy, then I really got rolling. It was so much fun to just everywhere I went, and it woke up curiosity in my head about these things, and I wanted to have a record of what I found. And so it gave me a lot to work with, and yeah, I learned a lot from just having a camera because you're looking for things.
Gary, my very first camera was a Miranda Model G. Good choice. A question is, what papers are you using for your woodblock prints? It looks like, I'm guessing, a Japanese paper, Kirikata or something like that?
Yeah, well, a lot of those are on Japanese paper. It's all archival paper. You can buy Japanese papers in places in Seattle that sell paper, and a lot of it is from Japan or domestic paper too. But I think the Japanese papers are the most interesting. They have more color to them, and there's just I don't know. They respond differently to the woodcut when I print them, and no, it's just it's available, and I don't know what to add to that, but. Well, I just feel it's, for me, seeing my work on the walls here, I've sat there for a lot of time since the show opened, sort of answering questions and whatever, but also sort of reliving the things that I found in those photographs, and kind of reliving that experience to some degree. So it's a gift to me to have this opportunity to look again at some of my work. And yeah, so I feel privileged to be able to do that.
Do you look at anything and go, what was I thinking?
I guess I don't ask that question of myself very often. I just, no, I think I trust my judgment. Just whatever I photograph of something, and usually what it does is reminds me of that thing that I saw, and it's a good way for me to kind of relive that discovery. And I think that's important for me.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
I really love hearing you talk about creating high caliber work that's interesting to you yourself. And I mean, your words are just really speaking to me, and I'd love to hear you talk more about creating work for you versus creating work for someone else to enjoy, which you've also talked about. So anything more you want to say about that? I just find it beautiful.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that too clearly. Can you, I have bad ears, so I'm just.
Loud, okay. I'll be louder. I enjoyed hearing you talk about creating high caliber work for your own interest because it's interesting to you, but you also talked about how you then would hope that it would be interesting to someone else. And it's very inspirational to hear you talk about that. So I would love to hear as much as you want to talk about that. Go.
Well, I think as an artist, you don't know what other people are seeing, and it's, I think, my job to make a record of these things that I am impressed with and share that, and maybe stimulate some curiosity and desire of people to look for some of the same things, or maybe they didn't look that close at things, and I hope that I can have that interest stimulated in people. So
well, Gary, you and I are old friends, and we got together by Art Grice. At the time, you were photographing the bunkers, and I was painting images of the bunkers.
right.
You went on, I went on. But I want you all to know that Gary is the one true critic of my work that I trust. And it is such a great gift to know someone who has such an incredible eye, and I think you all would agree with that from seeing his work. But from another artist, thank you very much, Gary.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I think that you and I both accept critical comments about, and we want to know, is there something you're missing, or is there something that maybe you didn't realize in your own work? So this is what art is a discovery thing. You're discovering things through your curiosity or just through happenstance, but our job as artists is to keep a record of these things, I think. So your work certainly, you work on things for a long time and get them really to a high degree of perfection, and I appreciate that. So.
Dina has an amazing bunker painting, one of Gail's large paintings in the collection, and it's a real favorite, and it's also quite different from the landscape pieces, but I do see a real sort of simpatico conversation between some of those early subjects that you both have chosen.
Hello. As another artist and as a pencil artist, I feel like my words are right out of your mouth when you're looking at things and trying to get other people's attention and paying a lot of attention yourself and emphasizing the things to look at. I find that people come and tell me that, oh, I never noticed those things before, and now I always am looking for them. So keep on doing that because it does pay off. And congratulations on turning to pencil. You'll love it.
Well, I think that we as artists have a gift of curiosity. And I think by pointing out to people things in their surroundings that you find significant, maybe we start getting folks to look a little closer at things around them, because you want to stimulate some interest and maybe examining things a little more closely. The rewards might be there and they might not, but it's worth a try.
Gary, this is Art.
Oh, there you
go. I just have to say a couple of things from my experience with you over the years. And and certainly appreciate it all. But I've imagined you as an explorer, in many ways. And if you look back in time, geological time, or in archaeological time, I know you would be out on the point, looking at things, figuring things out. And people, all of us would have then, as we do now, we would be trusting you a lot with your judgments about things and what you were seeing, because you've always been that. You've been an explorer. And he and I have gone to the eastern part of the state and other places over the years, and he's the one that drives. He'll get in the car and he'll drive all day long because he just doesn't want to stop. He's curious. So he is a seeker and a looker, and in a deep way, in a wonderful way. So that's really been inspiring. Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Art. Well, I think that we as artists, Art and other artists and myself, that's kind of our job, to point out things to make people's life more interesting. The more you see, the more you enjoy where you are or where you're going or where you've been. And you bring some of that back with you and stimulates other people's curiosity to maybe look a little harder. Maybe they didn't see something and they find out they can. So that's kind of the job of the artist, I think, is to help stimulate people's curiosity and interest in subjects. So
Beautiful.
Thanks everyone for coming today. And we do have a reception in the gallery. We're set up so that we can enjoy the art and little nips and sips. So I hope you'll stay and join us. And thanks, Gary, for a masterful life and career and all this amazing art. Thank you.